I am Anna Hinton, Director of Parental Options and Information in the Office of Innovation and Improvement at the U.S. Department of Education. On behalf of the department, I'd like to thank our partners, the National PTA, Harvard Family Research Project, United Worldwide, and the National PERC Coordination Center for helping to make this series possible. The department recognizes that family engagement is an essential ingredient to improving students' academic achievement. So we really seek to utilize this webinar series to the masses and to emphasize the need to think systemically about the way we engage families in their children's education. So our first installment, which was about 2 months ago, really laid the foundation for our future webinars in this series by, one, offering a new research-based definition for family, school, and community engagement, and two, by really emphasizing and reframing the conversation around family engagement, emphasize the need to move beyond random acts of engagement to more systemic efforts of family engagement that are driven by data, supported by research, and aligned to instructional goals and linked to learning. And so today's webinar really takes us a step further. Based on feedback we received from the field regarding our first webinar, we recognize the need to provide more examples of how to do this work in a systemic and comprehensive way. So the second webinar will examine how funding streams, particularly Title I funds, can be used to implement strong systemic family engagement work. And it also speaks to the ability of school districts to support school-level family engagement efforts and institute capacity-building mechanisms to assist with the implementation of systemic family engagement. To facilitate today's webinar, Michaela Duran, Director of Government Affairs at the National PTA, National Office of Programs and Public Policy, will serve as our moderator. At the National PTA, Michaela is responsible for developing public policy recommendations, representing PTA before Congress, the administration, national coalitions, and educating and mobilizing PTA members around critical public policy issues. Kicking off our agenda today will be opening remarks from our Assistant Secretary of Elementary and Secondary Education here at the Department of Education, Dr. Thelma Melendez de Santa Ana. Dr. Melendez is responsible for administering over $14 billion in Title I Part A funds. She directs, coordinates, and recommends policy for programs designed to assist SCAs and LEAs with improving the achievement of elementary and secondary school students. Following Dr. Melendez's remarks will be presentations from Susan Schaefer, Director of the Maryland PERC, and Barbara Scher, Family Involvement Coordinator at the Maryland State Department of Education. After their presentation, we will take a few minutes to address some of your questions before we reconvene with Michelle Brooks, Assistant Superintendent of Family and Student Engagement at the Boston Public Schools. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Thelma Melendez de Santa Ana, Assistant Secretary of the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. I'm excited to open up this discussion today, as I know you share my belief that family engagement is key to ensuring that all children learn and that they have a chance to succeed. I was superintendent of the Pomona Unified School District in California. Family engagement played a key role in our efforts to provide every child with an excellent education. I believe this webinar is a great opportunity to discuss with your colleagues specific strategies to improve family engagement in your own schools and districts. Just a few minutes, you'll be hearing from 4 speakers who will discuss innovative partnerships and strategies that are working locally and statewide to promote and strengthen family engagement, especially in our low-performing Title I schools. Before we get into the discussion, however, I want to talk broadly about the importance of family engagement in the administration's overall efforts for school reform. As most of you have already heard, the Blueprint supports family engagement in a number of ways. We are working to enhance transparency in school report cards about academic performance and school climate for parents, and we're giving families a voice and an opportunity to engage in their child's school. The proposal includes Title I family engagement provisions. These requirements provide starting points for districts and schools' family engagement activities. But the work should go beyond these requirements to meaningfully integrate family engagement into overall plans to improve student achievement. Because Title I is a major federal funding stream for family engagement work, we are putting more resources into family involvement because we know we need to do more and we need to do it better. We're proposing to double funding for parent engagement from 1 to 2% of the Title I dollars, or a total of $270 million. At the same time, in order to drive innovation, we will allow states to use another 1% of the Title I dollars, about $145 million, for grant programs that support and expand district-level, evidence-based parental involvement practices. And we will allow community-based organizations, including the Parental Information and Resource Center, to compete for these funds, along with districts and other nonprofits. Given the persistence of the achievement gap and the growing body of research that shows the importance of implementing family engagement in a comprehensive manner, rather than piecemeal, random act programs, there is a need for more meaningful integration of family engagement in school and district improvement plans and a recognition of its value in promoting student learning. We want to see districts and schools move away from viewing family engagement as a checklist of activities that they do to comply with Title I requirements. Instead, we want to see them develop outcome-focused strategies that are meaningfully linked to student learning and to schools' overall plan for improving student achievement. For this to happen, family engagement needs to be systemic, integrated, and sustained, not a set of isolated, standalone activities. We recognize that strengthening family engagement involves strategies that are designed to help families understand what they can do at home and in partnership with schools to improve their children's learning, to help empower families to become better advocates for improving their children's education and schools, and to provide families with more decision-making governance roles to help shape the direction of the district and school policies. These efforts should include providing families with information about their children's academic performance and their school's performance, and providing this information in a way that families can use to help affect change. Other components needed to strengthen family engagement work in states, districts, and schools include strong state-level partnerships that pool resources and talent to help districts and schools build capacity to carry out family engagement work, and capacity-building mechanisms, as Anna mentioned, to help districts and schools develop the infrastructure, personnel, strategies, and incentives to engage families and understand how to link that engagement to student learning. Well, it's true that there's no simple one-size-fits-all answer as to what an effective family engagement program looks like. We do know that parents need to be active partners with teachers and educators, and that we need to remove barriers to parental involvement in schools. I want to leave you with some questions we should all consider as we move forward in our work to improve family engagement and make it a critical part of all of our schools. First, why is it so critical that strong innovations emerge within family engagement work, especially within Title I schools? What is at stake for these children? What do we stand to lose if we don't effectively engage families in turning around low-performing schools, or if teachers and leaders don't come to understand the value of meaningfully engaging families? To help you think through these questions as it applies to our own work on the ground, you'll hear from some specific best practices from Maryland's PERC and State Department of Education, the Boston Public Schools, and the National PTA on what has been some successful and innovative strategies in improving family engagement. We hope that you find this information helpful, and we look forward to working with you to ensure we can provide the right supports to schools and districts to improve and strengthen family involvement. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughtful remarks, Dr. Melendez de Santa Ana. Dr. Melendez de Santa Ana championed systemic family engagement on the district level, making it one of 6 essential components of school reform in Pomona Unified School District. And Dr. Melendez de Santa Ana's work truly departed from random acts of parent involvement, these one-time events or add-on programs. And instead, she really developed systems capacity to integrate and sustain meaningful family engagement in her core district priorities. So what does this look like on the ground? How did she do this? Just to name a few things, she established family resource centers that provided technical assistance to schools to implement family engagement plans. She shared best practices on reaching all families through a lot of innovative strategies. She also created standards for welcoming family environments in every school. And she even included family engagement as a metric for principal evaluation. So it is just such a so wonderful to have such a strong champion for family engagement who also has a practitioner lens at the Department of Education. So thank you again, Dr. Melendez de Santa Ana. While district-level family engagement, such as the work implemented by Dr. Melendez, is essential, it is also critical to have state-level systemic family engagement that supports this work on the local level. And the state of Maryland has been a national guiding light for statewide systemic family engagement that targets resources to Title I schools and other under-resourced communities. The next presentation is going to focus on the innovative partnership between the Maryland State Department of Education and the Maryland State Parental Information and Resource Center. I'll refer to this as the Maryland PERC. This presentation will demonstrate how strong state-level capacity supported the implementation of innovative programs such as telling stories to reach families in underserved communities. It is my pleasure to introduce our next slate of speakers, Barbara Scher and Susan Schaefer. Barbara Scher currently serves as the Family Involvement Coordinator at the Maryland Department of Education. She began her career at the Park School in Baltimore County as the director for their after-school program. She later worked as the assistant to the child care coordinator in the Governor's Office for Children, Youth, and Families. For the past decade, Barbara has worked in the area of school, family, and community involvement at the Maryland State Department of Education. Susan Schaefer is the executive director of the Maryland PERC and the president of Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium, a nonprofit whose mission is to build the capacity of educational and community-based organizations to support low-income and culturally diverse children and their families. She has more than 35 years of professional training, management, consultation, teaching, and materials development experience in family engagement, gender equity, and multicultural education. Susan has also authored several books and publications related to parenting, family engagement, equity, and cultural proficiency, women's history, and disability. So I would like to now pass it over to Susan and Barbara.
One moment, folks. We're fixing a microphone. Okay, go ahead, Susan and Barbara. Try again.
I'll try again.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. What I would first like to do is to welcome all of you. We are very happy to be with you this afternoon. Our presentation objectives include the following. We would like to talk about why this relationship works, what kind of structures are in place, why it's value added, what are the mutual benefits, how this relationship works, what kind of collaboration, partnership, planning, and assessment that we engage in, and what we feel are the benefits of a successful relationship. What are some of the strategies, and what are the outcomes? Overall, these relationships, we believe, are the engine that drives successful collaborations in support of student learning. We know that we can't do this work alone. To be successful, we rely on multiple collaborations and partnerships throughout Maryland. Those include our own staff, our state and local PTAs, our LEAs, other federal programs, Title III, Special Education, Title I, other program partners in Maryland, the Maryland Family Network, the National Network of Partnership Schools, and our military families, as well as other community and business organizations.
In order for partnerships to work, you must be intentional about the work you are doing, as well as working together. Next slide. Obviously, this is not work that can be done alone. We all, as state leaders, share a common mission of fostering meaningful engagement for families, strengthening families and school partnerships, and building capacity among educators, parents, and community and business partners.
We know that each state has its own unique characteristics, issues, and personalities. We are fortunate in Maryland to have the longest-term superintendent in the country, Dr. Nancy Grasmick, who's been at the job for 19 years. That consistency helps us to implement this common mission.
Ultimately, the value added in sharing the responsibility with other organizations is an integrated and coordinated family engagement effort. These relationships help to limit duplication of effort. We've created a statewide presence through clear and consistent communication that is truly two-way. As you can see on the slide, the communication between the State Department of Education and the PERC, we are in contact with each other all of the time. The FSCE, the State Department, as well as to our local school systems and our stakeholders in the district level, as well as the PERC relationships with our local school district stakeholders as well, is ongoing, and they have complete access to the districts. This includes also accountability and feedback, as well as keeping each other in check by reassessing what we do through feedback from our district stakeholders, as well as dialoguing as state leaders among the PERC, the PTA, and the FSCE.
What is essential to this relationship is the building of trust. Those of us that work directly with families know that this is something that we cannot bypass. The same way that we build trust and relationships with families, you have to do the same thing with partners. You cannot bypass this step. What we've seen in Maryland is the benefit of this statewide infrastructure that we have built that creates visibility and a platform for all of the partners that are involved, and ultimately more services for families and more implementation of services that create higher performance in schools. Through our defined roles, we are able to support each other, and during a time where we have limited resources, there is no time better than now where we need to work together to support each other in the work that we do. We collaborate with state and local PTAs, for example. Last year, we launched the first in Maryland Parent Involvement Month in October. We did that in collaboration with our state PTA, the FSCE, and the PERC. What we're working on now as another example is the first non-traditional foster parent PTA in the country that will be chartered by the Maryland PTA. Another example of this collaboration at the state level with the PERC and the PTA and the State Department of Education is we developed an alliance that's modeled after NCPI, the National Coalition of Parent Involvement in Education, that we refer to as MAFI, the Maryland Alliance for Family Involvement in Education. This is a network of Maryland educators and education organizations committed to sharing information around strengthening school and family partnerships and the recommendations of the Maryland Parent Advisory Council, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, as well as the Maryland PTA standards. Members of the alliance include the State Department of Education, PTA, PERC, and other stakeholders. Through MAFI, we are able to offer two what we like to call professional conversations a year. We use the National PTA standards as our guide in organizing these conversations.
In fact, we've had Ann Henderson join us to discuss welcoming families and building partnerships. Sherry DeBode Johnson, the Director of Programs for National PTA, to discuss supporting student success. We've had presentations on national models like the National Network of Partnership Schools and the Comer model. And most recently, we had 3 local school superintendents address Standard 5, sharing power. I want to point out that this truly speaks to a shared responsibility in that as an SEA, we recognize our limitations, both financial and human, to provide professional development, which we believe is key to our work. And we are limited in being able to do this, and through MAFI, we are able to provide these opportunities for educators around family engagement.
What we're trying to do with MAFI as well is create these real-life experiences and practices for the educators who can then bring them back to their local schools. And the synergy of all of these collaborations creates what we believe to be a systemic family engagement program. It also helps to really make each organization, each agency bigger than we really are, so that we have more statewide influence. This trust helps to build what we call a culture of partnerships in Maryland and higher performance in schools, particularly those low-performing schools. And if I may add, that Maryland is the #1 school system in the country, evaluated by Education Weekly. So family engagement is not the only innovative strategy, but it is considered essential. And because it is embedded in all of the programs that we do, we're able to see the success in Maryland.
I would just like to share a little bit about our framework at the Maryland State Department of Education. In the fall of 2003, our state superintendent created the Maryland Parent Advisory Council that included 120 stakeholders, including educators, parents, and community representatives. And this was co-chaired by our state superintendent and the state PTA president at that time. The council was charged with making recommendations to our state superintendent and the State Board of Education on one of our 5 state educational goals, that families will be involved in education. The council presented 21 recommendations at a state board meeting in August of 2005. All of these recommendations were accepted by the state board, and these recommendations currently serve as a framework for family engagement. I want to mention that both the PERC and the PTA have been very supportive to this work because it truly is a shared responsibility, as the title of the report reflects. So this gives you a quick and dirty overview of our framework within the state. I'm going now to focus on our approach to building capacity at the state, local, and school levels when it comes to family engagement for Title I, and how what we do is aligned to our overarching framework. This is what we like to call the wedding cake to student success, which is a snapshot of Title I at the state, local, school, and classroom levels. In Maryland, we have 24 local school systems. Just like many states, we have urban, rural, and suburban areas. At the state level, the way we support and carry out our Title I is we have an annual monitoring where we visit our districts once a year to monitor the 11 components of Title I. We also provide a training on building capacity for school teams, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, as well as provide ongoing technical assistance to all 24 districts. The PERC and the PTA are also instrumental in supporting the work that we do for Title I.
The state education agency is able to do this work, again, with the support of its key partners. The Maryland PERC, which provides statewide support with our goal of building capacity for family engagement and student achievement, and then the Maryland State Parent Teachers Association, which provides leadership development and family engagement. For example, we work with the PTA to provide training to the Title I schools, and in turn, we support their board-approved diversity plan at the school level. What you see as central and core to this wedding cake is that family engagement is one of the core innovative strategies for student success.
At the local school system level, as you know, all districts, all school systems must have a parent involvement policy. We also have family involvement coordinators and ELL family outreach coordinators who are designated by their local superintendent to be the point of contact for family engagement in the school district. We also work with our Title I coordinators and encourage these partnerships between the family involvement coordinators, the ELL family outreach coordinators, as well as Title I coordinators to support the work at the district level as well as to the school level. At the school level, each school must have a plan for how they're going to implement Title I for parents and what that plan would look like. All schools must have a part of their plan, which is part of their school improvement plan, and that serves as the blueprint for family engagement. And then they must also have a plan that is distributed to parents, which would be in a more family-friendly format. And in many states, schools don't write policies, so we refer to them as plans. At the classroom level, the school parent compact, I believe, is where the rubber meets the road. This is the essential conversation that takes place among the parent, the teacher, and the student of how to support student success. Ultimately, the value added in building capacity and sharing the responsibility is for our students to succeed. Now, how do we do all of this? Next slide. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we conduct an annual Title I program review or monitoring for all 11 Title I Part A components, which takes place in the winter. And we do a follow-up visit with each district once in the spring and, if needed, in the fall. Our monitoring is mirrored after the federal Student Achievement and School Accountability Tool, or some of you may know as SASA. When we were monitored by the feds during the 2007-2008 school year, we had several findings in parent involvement or areas where districts were out of compliance, these are findings, against the SEA. We knew that we needed to take action. Susan and I had a conversation about the need to build capacity of educators and parents around the requirements of Section 1118. And at that same time, one of our local school systems had actually developed a training on the School Parent Compact, which we borrowed, if you will, and we have built on that training and developed a training to build capacity around family engagement and Title I to include all the requirements under Section 1118, the district-level policies and plans, school-level plans, and school parent compacts. An area that we added in Maryland is that all local school systems in their district-level plan or policy, as well as all schools in their school-level plans, must include how they share information with parents about the PERC. Again, recognizing our limitation of resources, the PERC has helped to sponsor many of these trainings and get them started. Now, in order for us to get the training started, we had to lay the groundwork. Next slide. First, we had to get the support from our state Title I director, Maria Lamb, who has been extremely supportive to the work that we do. Trainings were coordinated with local Title I coordinators, and they had to be there for the training. Additionally, trainings needed to be coordinated with the PERC as they supported many of them. Our own Title I staff at the department needed to be on board and educated on the requirements of Section 1118 as well. This next one is a very important one. The only way we would agree to conduct a school team training is if at the training was at minimum an administrator, a parent, and a teacher. Most school teams had an average of 5 participants. Often, at least 2 parents were part of a team. Teams also had guidance counselors, community partners, hippie home visitors, and other representatives. We had to advertise training, and Title I coordinators helped to recruit the school teams. And last, my partner, Young Chan Han, and I would review school-level plans and school parent compacts, so we were familiar with what schools were doing and could give them feedback on their plans and compacts as it relates to compliance. While it sounds like we're honing in on compliance, at first we have been, but now we are able to focus on meaningful engagement. Next slide. Okay. The first 2.5 hours of our training is spent on the research and requirements, and then we move on to the school plan and the compact. At several of these trainings, the PERC had a role. Their role was to cover the research part of the training, as well as to support the teams as they were working on their plans and compacts.
A big part of this training is to provide time for schools to work on their plans and compacts, because sometimes finding that time for schools is challenging. At some trainings, we actually had peer reviews where schools would review another school's plan and/or compact for feedback. And the half day is focused on the school-level plan and compacts, next part of that training. We've recently created a second part of this training, which we call Review, Revise, Renew, where we walk through with school teams the process so they can review their plans and tweak things as they need to, look where there are challenges and what changes can be made for the following school year. Next slide. Additionally, we've created tools to support our local school system and schools that are very transparent to the law. Developed checklists that are usually on a one-pager, with the exception of the district policy and plan, which is a page and a half. We use these tools during the training and encourage both districts and schools to use them as they work on their plans. Next slide. We've come a far way. We began the training in 2008-2009 school year. That school year, when we conducted our Title I monitoring, there were 67 findings or areas local school systems and or schools were out of compliance across the state. Out of 11 components, we were #1 in findings, which is not where we wanted to be. This past school year, you can see there were significant changes going on at the local school system and level, which we were very proud of. Again, as a result of the feedback we received as presenters, you could see participants having those aha moments, school administrators. You could see the buy-in. They felt more comfortable and had a better understanding of just not the requirements, but the importance of family engagement. And parents truly appreciated the opportunity to gain knowledge and understand their role. Some of the lessons learned, I want to highlight just a couple of them. Not all administrators buy into family engagement, nor do school teams' work come naturally. Just as organizations, we must be intentional about our work. Schools must, too, be intentional about family engagement. Especially leaders of buildings set the tone, and if they don't buy in, it makes it harder for the team. Time allotted for school teams to work on their plans and compacts must also be built in. The training provides a starting point, not the final product. Next slide. Susan is going to share and talk about an innovative model, telling stories that truly builds capacity for school communities, and it's one that we really support and encourage our schools to get in.
Next slide, please. The Telling Stories program, which we partner with Teaching for Change, a nonprofit located in the District of Columbia, helps build parent self-confidence and facilitates collaboration to improve schools using parents and caretakers' cultural strengths to build mutual respect and form coalitions among families from different ethnic groups. This is a program that meets families and educators where they are and practices the philosophies of families as a resource. Next slide, please. The next 4 slides will give you some specific examples of Telling Stories projects. As you're looking at them, I want to give you an overview of their goals. The important part of Telling Stories is that family engagement becomes embedded as an essential ingredient to support the mission of the school to improve student learning and create a positive school climate. The whole school takes ownership, and families become part of the engine to create change. When you build community, you strengthen schools, and trust is a key predictor of school quality. Parents decide to get involved based on the relationships that they create within the school. And once this community is developed, only then can family engagement become self-sustaining. We do weekly evening meetings. We provide opportunities for parent leadership training. But we begin this program with community building, where Telling Stories creates opportunities for families to connect to each other and to their school, often for the first time, through the power of story. Next, we work with families to gather information and develop skills. And parents gain the tools they need during regular parent meetings to analyze the school climate, the facilities, and the quality of teaching and learning at their schools. Finally, we identify and prioritize concerns, and by families learning to ask the right questions, they prioritize their concerns and determine who has the power to address them most immediately and effectively. They take action. These actions run from getting a crossing guard for a busy intersection near a school, to bringing in anti-gang people to work with their parents and work with their children and families. Parents have asked for assistance around transition between elementary and middle and high school. They've increased interpreting services when they are necessary. And they partner with community-based organizations so that they really develop a safe, healthy, and learning environment for children. And finally, we evaluate the work continuously in order to sustain the work. Every aspect of this program involves action and reflection. Telling stories involves all key stakeholders in assessing our work in order to increase our impact. The sustainability relies on the initiative and development of local leaders. We provide youth training and child care, so this becomes an activity, an event for the entire family. And it is finally linked to learning. We do this through academic achievement committees where the families sit on these committees and provide feedback, through roving readers where we increase the literacy not only of the children but of the families themselves. They learn to conduct classroom observations, and they participate in parent-teacher dialogues. This sustainability relies on the initiative and development of these local leaders. What are the keys to success? Again, always a principal who has a vision and commitment to parents as genuine partners in the education of their children. The sustainability requires that all key stakeholders assess the work in order, again, to increase impact. Family engagement is embedded as a core strategy that supports academic achievement, that it is not an add-on, and that we were able to do this so that we create a whole school buy-in so that everybody is a contributor and everybody helps to increase student achievement and improve school perform. Some of the goals that we've attained are increased parent engagement, increased knowledge for parents to be able to work with their children at home, and improve school climate. We've heard stories from parents who have lived in the same apartment buildings who didn't know one another and now go to the grocery store and share stories and assist one another with parenting responsibilities. Next slide, please. The overall progress from 2007 to 2010 is we've served 18 Title I schools within 8 school districts. Almost 1,900 parents have participated, and we have developed leadership skills in 108 parents who have then participated in cross-city parent leaderships between Baltimore, for example, and the District of Columbia. And the outcomes you can see on the next slide. I won't go into that. I'll just mention that the percent of students scoring proficient or better in reading or math on the Maryland State Assessment in 10 Maryland schools increased in 2009. So what are our take-home messages for effective partnership? We have to be intentional about our work. We have to be purposeful and make these linkages to student learning and achievement.
Always keep your eye on the prize, which is really to look at how we are developing and establishing and supporting our families in truly supporting that home-school partnership, as well as high levels of cooperation and coordination, reduce duplication of efforts, and increase efficiency and outreach capacity. And one of the things I really would like to say about these effective partnerships is when we have a training, we don't invite the PERC or the PTA just to come and introduce themselves and talk about what it is that they do. They truly have a role in the work that we do, and I would say that that also works both ways, when the PTA invites us to participate in their activities and events, as well as the PERC. The State Department of Education has a role more than just saying who we are and how we support the work that we are doing.
We truly have seen the benefits of this statewide infrastructure where we really believe in this shared responsibility and we practice it. And strong ties make each organization and agency better able to provide systemic capacity building and integrative services for families and students to increase academic achievement. And that works for all of our families so that family engagement becomes the central, innovative, core instructional strategy that must be embedded and not siloed. It's center. It isn't isolated.
Great. Well, thank you for that informative presentation, Susan and Barbara. This is truly a remarkable collaboration between PERC, PTA, and the SCA, and I know that other state departments of education are really looking to Maryland for ways that they can replicate this statewide framework. I do have a question from our participants, beginning with Mirden Thompson, and her question is, how do we get past a cultural attitude that has removed parents from advocacy and sees them merely as a fundraiser to offset dwindling school budgets? Many schools would claim strong parental engagement, but the definition is loose and usually based on fundraising activities rather than programs and partnerships.
I think that what we've seen is that parents, in order to build and sustain family engagement, true family engagement, they have to be part of the solution. They have to have the skills to be able to be on a level playing field with those that are making decisions. They know their children best. And if we only include them as part of fundraising, then we are missing an entire resource of families who have tremendous contributions to provide.
I would also like to add that building capacity is so critical when you're talking about building capacity for educators, so they understand the importance and know how to work with parents, as well as building capacity of parents, so they too know how to work with educators.
Thank you. Our next question is from Debbie Rude. And her question is, how successful are you relative to holding schools accountable for both the classroom compact and the parent involvement policy? And I know you touched upon that, but could you delve a little bit more deeply?
Through our monitoring, when we monitor our school districts, we randomly select schools that we will be reviewing all of their documentation, which, as we all know, how important documentation is. We review school-level plans, those that are in the school improvement plans, the plans that go home to parents, as well as the school parent compact. And we work with the districts to ensure that the plans and the compacts are meeting the requirements. And we give feedback to schools and to the districts as well.
I'd like to add to that. I think that the other thing that we're trying to do in Maryland is provide incentives so that school districts see the benefit of family engagement. And nothing speaks more loudly than success, and it has a great ripple effect. So that if we're doing something successful in one school or one district, then other schools and other districts want to get on board. And because of the kind of communication that goes on between PTA, between the SCA and PERC, we're able to communicate that to other schools about what's going on and how these successes are making in academic achievement.
And also through our monitoring, we have seen, as you saw in the slide, significant decrease in our findings, and this goes across the board of our school-level plans as well as our school parent compacts.
Great, thank you. And I have another question, and I apologize in advance for mispronouncing the name, but Wangui Neguna. And her question is, given that states and districts are struggling with budget shortfalls, will there be additional dollars available for family engagement, or and where does the 2% set aside or the $270 million come from? that question is directed to the Maryland Department of Education and also to Anna Hinton at the U.S. Department of Education, who can answer the question about the 2% set aside.
I'll go first. This is Anna. So the 2% set aside is an increase that the department is proposing from the current existing 1% Title I set aside to support family engagement activities under Section 1118. So the department is proposing an increase for that particular set aside. So that's where the 2% comes from.
I would just like to add, I believe, and I say this all the time, what's good for Title I schools is good for all schools. And the additional 2% will truly, I think, make a difference in our districts and our schools.
Thank you. I really like the example about implementing the Telling Stories program in Title I schools to break down the communication between schools and family, especially for parents who may have had a negative school experience themselves. And, at first glance, I think social scientists may perceive storytelling to be a fluffy, feel-good program, but it is clear that this program is much more and that you have demonstrated strong outcomes. How important is evaluating data and outcomes in the implementation of these parent-focused programs?
Data is absolutely critical. We cannot do our work well without having access to that data. And every aspect of the work that we do with Telling Stories involves collecting data, having evaluation at each session we do, reviewing that session among and with the key stakeholders. And we involve the key stakeholders and outside evaluators in assessing these programs so that we can increase our impact. Sustainability relies on good evaluation and on the initiative and development of these local leaders who will then look at these evaluations and make assessments and judgments about the way they can either adapt or expand that program.
Great. Well, thank you, Susan and Barbara, again. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions on the Maryland partnership. I would now like to transition to our next presenter, Michelle Brooks at Boston Public Schools. Like Maryland, the Boston Public Schools has received national attention for its district-wide work in engaging families to raise student achievement. In fact, the late Senator Kennedy, who chaired the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, drafted legislation to replicate Boston's family engagement strategy across the country, as he truly understood that we would not be able to close the achievement gap if families were not engaged in their children's education. It is an honor to introduce Michelle Brooks, who currently serves as the Assistant Superintendent for Family and Student Engagement for the Boston Public Schools. She is a parent activist, education organizer, and advocate whose work of empowering parents to change structures and policies of schools and districts spans over 20 years. Ms. Brooks began her work in 1990 at the J.E. Burke High School in Boston, where she founded the first high school family center in a Boston public school. In 1999, Ms. Brooks moved on to become the founding director of the Boston Parent Organizing Network, a collaboration of over 30 community-based organizations. It is my pleasure to introduce Michelle Brooks. Michelle?
Thank you, Michela. I want to begin by just saying that the work that I'm presenting today is the result of approximately 18 months of development. About 2 years ago, when I assumed the position of Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Family and Student Engagement, we began to review the work underway. There were a list of accomplishments and activities, and a number of them were very impressive. However, when we posed the question, what is different because of this work, we were really hard-pressed to produce evidence of the impact of our work. And in addition to that conversation, we had also been faced with been looking at the acceleration agenda that had been unveiled by Dr. Carol Johnson. And given that the research clearly demonstrates that the work that is most impactful is linked to learning, we knew we had to align our work with the district's goals for the acceleration agenda. So we began this journey to define and focus the work in ways that aligns the engagement of both families and students to the acceleration agenda and academic targets in ways that were measurable in order for us to weigh the impact of our work. It was incredibly important for us to be able to say, because we've done this work, this is what is different. And it was also very important for us to have data to inform the continuous improvement of the work. The process of defining, organizing, and facilitating the work became the framework for building the infrastructure and implementing the strategies in a systemic way. My presentation today is going to center on the definition of systemic engagement as introduced by Dr. Karen Mapp, a member of the National Working Group on Family and Community Engagement. The concept of systemic engagement also draws on the work of Dr. Richard Elmore, Philip Shechte, and the Public Education Leadership Group. I believe that it provides a guide for developing strategies for systemic engagement. As I move through this presentation, I will draw references to the aspects of systemic engagement, that it is focused on instructional core, it engages multiple stakeholders, it is connected across various settings and impacts school culture in ways that create shared power and responsibility. I want to provide a bit of the Boston context. Slide. Boston has always had a very strong parent activist community dating back to the 1970s. And since 1995, there has always been a position in the Boston Public Schools that directly reports to the superintendent and that is focused on family engagement. In support of building the capacity of schools and dedicating a dedicated staff person in the form of the family community outreach coordinators was established in 2004 that took the work to the next level. The current structure is Office of Family and Student Engagement, and when Dr. Carol Johnson came on board, she added student engagement under this umbrella of family and community engagement. And in my role as Assistant Superintendent for Family and Student Engagement, I serve as a member of the leadership team along with the academic superintendents who oversee schools and other department heads that lead the work across the district. Having policies that require accountability around aspects of family engagement provides the base for our work. We have been really fortunate that the district's leadership has intentionally elevated family engagement as one of the 4 key strategies for achieving the acceleration agenda. There is a universal acknowledgement in Boston Public Schools that family engagement is essential to the accomplishment of the goals of the acceleration agenda. And Title I not only provides a framework for producing the artifacts of engagement, but it also creates an opportunity for more effective, beneficial implementation. We like to call this accountability with a purpose. In addition to the family engagement policy, which was established in 1996, and I must say that policy still stands because it was such a progressive policy that was established by parents and parent activists in the city. So in addition to that, we have the 7 Essentials for Whole School Improvement, which is the district's roadmap for reform, and all of the work in Boston is aligned to the 7 essentials for whole school improvement. And the 6th essential is partnering with families in the community to support student learning and engagement. And the wonderful thing that provides legs for our work is that the 7 essentials actually gives examples of what partnering with families in the community should look like in the classroom, in the school, and at the district level. Our dimensions of effective teaching and principalship have been developed to really create a standard for effective teaching and effective school leadership. And both of them include partnerships with family and community. And I just want to stop here and say that the evaluations of the teacher and principal have also an indicator around family and community engagement. So this work is tied not just to a set of standards that give a framework for how principals and teachers should be in the classroom and in the school, but it's also tied to the evaluation. Boston Public Schools has a achievement gap policy that speaks specifically to our efforts to eliminate the achievement gap in Boston. And one of the key themes throughout is not just cultural competency, but partnering with families and communities to build the cultural competence of our schools. So it's been really not much of a challenge in terms of walking into this foundation. The challenge has been that there is a mental model for family engagement that still sees it as customer satisfaction and participation, and not one that is focused on the core enterprise. And for us, the core enterprise happens in classrooms and in schools. And so as we defined the work, our core enterprise was identified the unit of change as classroom. And that's where we focus our work. Classrooms and schools have become our unit of change. And family engagement is one of the variables that impacts the instructional core, which is defined by the Public Education Leadership Project as the relationship between teacher and student in the presence of content. We firmly believe that family engagement is a lever for improving student outcomes. And when we reviewed the research, we found that the most measurable impact of family engagement is in the areas of increased attendance, decreased discipline occurrences, and consistency, and academic performance. Thus, we use these as intermediary outcomes in examining the linkages between family engagement and improved student achievement. Since we know that attendance and disciplinary issues are directly related to student performance. After a process of collective analysis to deconstruct our work, what emerged was the realization that the work of the district level office should not be direct service. It would be an expensive and ineffective undertaking giving the prevailing mental model of warm, fuzzy, random acts of engagement. The role that emerged was one of capacity building, building the capacity of schools, families, students, and staff, and building the capacity of each stakeholder to actively engage with each other in a partnership focused on student learning and school improvement. The work is organized around a set of value statements. The district's vision for family and student engagement is that every school will welcome every family and every student, actively engaging them as partners in student learning and school improvement. And there is also a set of core beliefs around family, schools, and partnerships and how they must coexist that drive the work. One of the things that we learned as we researched best practice is that we didn't have to start from scratch. We utilized existing resources and adapted them for the Boston context. This allowed us to move quickly to establish our infrastructure. An example of this is the adaptation of the National PTA Standards for Family School Partnerships. We took those standards and we modified them to fit our context, to fit the Boston context, and added student engagement into the standards. And basically what these standards do is they form the core of our work. All of our work is focused on those standards because we believe that they provide a broad range of capacity building opportunities. We also redesigned the central role, establishing the role of engagement facilitators, whose role it is to work with academic superintendents and central departments to support the development of effective engagement strategies in schools and to collaborate across departments to ensure that aspects of family engagement are included in every department across the district. Our family and community outreach coordinators, which were established in 2004, provide a bridge for the culture of home and culture of school. They're in 31 schools, and they actually are focused now on building the capacity of that school that they're in to effectively engage families. And setting up this initiative and making the shifts with this initiative allowed us to create a space to develop a set of conditions for building the capacity of family engagement in schools. And it allowed us to experiment with some things and to develop some performance agreements around professional development, around family engagement action teams that worked on the school's family engagement plans, around participating in our parent university. And from all of the mandates or compliance pieces such as Title I and the 7 Essentials of Whole School Change. And we established 5 core elements for family and student engagement. These 5 core elements are Homeschool Compact, which is laid out in Title I, Section 1118. In Boston, we have school parent councils. Those are the parent groups, the local parent groups in each school, and they are supported by BPS policy. School site councils are supported through the Mass Ed reform and our BTU contract. The school site councils are Boston Public Schools' shared decision-making model that exists in every school. And with all of these 5 core elements, we're able to collect the artifacts and establish a baseline for the work of engagement in schools. But it's not enough for us to just collect these artifacts and have it become a piece of paper that's in a file with the dust that collects dust that schools will pull out and hand to us when we ask for it. What we ask for is evidence. So for every core element, there is evidence. With the Homeschool Compact, not only do we want to know that your Homeschool Compact has been developed with parents and teachers at your school, and that you have copies of signed Homeschool Compacts on file in your school, but we want to know, how do you use that Homeschool Compact? It's our expectation that Homeschool Compacts will be used as a way to connect with parents whenever there is an encounter with parents, that there is that it's a living document that is used by the classroom teacher, that is used across the school to reaffirm that agreement that has been developed in the homeschool compact. That's, for us, again, that's that accountability with the purpose. I want to add that this work is about 18 months in the making, and this is our first push this year for full implementation. Our baseline numbers and school responses have all been collected over the last year, and our full implementation begins this year. And these elements in the 5 core family engagement elements will provide a basis for our accountability process. And we will be developing public reports on the state of family engagement in each school. So each school will be able to see their indicators and where they stand with those indicators. One of the major pieces that is happening is that the district has established a baseline with a district-wide school climate survey, and that also provides us with data on where schools are in terms of the perceptions of families and students. One of the things that, as we begin to roll this work out, one of the things that we really wanted to make sure happened was to really focus on that core enterprise and our unit of change, that we developed some very clear strategies to help schools understand what linked to learning was. So in collaboration with the Office of Accountability, we were able to ensure that the whole school improvement plans for every school include a family engagement strategy that is directly linked to the school's instructional strategy. For many schools, this was a stretch, and our department spent most of last year scanning best practices in linking engagement to learning and aligning those best practices to the academic targets of the district. And as a result, we were able to develop a set of toolkits. The toolkits include of high impact strategies. And the toolkits include descriptions of strategies, step-by-step instructions, and resource listings for implementation. The critical piece of developing these strategies is that they are based on 4 key criteria. That the strategy is focused on a specific group of students, such as maybe all first grade students or students who are struggling with a specific math concept. The second criteria is that it is organized around a specific set of learning tasks, such as learning a set of high-frequency words. And number 3, it has a home learning activity that engages parents to help students with the learning task, such as a game, a word game, home activity that parents can be directly connected to in helping the student learn. And number 4, there is a way to communicate between the parent and the student the parent and the teacher regarding student progress with the learning task and also for celebrating success. So these high-impact strategies have been used and disseminated with a number of schools to help them really hone in on having that family engagement strategy in their whole school improvement plan directly linked to the instructional strategy that they have identified for their whole school improvement plan. Another strategy that we have really focused on that has been extremely successful for us is Parent University. And that is our primary strategy for building the capacity of families to become partners for students. Our class, our classes focus on child development and learning from cradle to career. Our collaboration with the BPS Early Childhood Education Department provides parents with strategies and opportunities through Play to Learn groups that help them understand how to stimulate their child's learning at an early age. Our collaboration with the Office of High School Services has been very helpful in helping us to produce a guide that helps parents understand whether their students are on track for graduation, and we provide the kind of training in classes at Parent University for parents to understand that. Our core curriculum at Parent University is focused on 4 strands. It's Parents Are Teachers, which helps parents understand how their children, about childhood development and how their children learn and how to set up learning at home. Our Advocate Strands helps parents understand how to navigate Boston Public Schools and exactly what the learning standards are, what their child should know and be able to do at each grade level. And we've collaborated with the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, really focus those kinds of classes so that parents walk away not baffled by education speak, but really empowered because they now have the tools to help their child be successful in learning at home, and they know what to look for when their homework comes home, and they also have some context for their conversations with their teachers.
Right.
Our family learning guides has also been part of that collaboration. When we look at really measuring progress, we have collaborated with the Office of Research Assessment and Evaluation to really look at the school climate survey and to really be able to provide that baseline and help schools understand what areas of improvement they need. We've also begun some real focused data collection for Parent University and developed some indicators that would help us to measure the impact of this work. And while we all know that it's difficult to claim causal links between family and student engagement, we also know that the correlations are strong. So we've been really focusing on developing that data. And with Parent University, one of the correlations that we're developing is linking our Parent University participation to the student ID of the parent's child's student ID. And we're going to begin to look at changes over time to see if we're able to draw some very strong correlations. The challenge for us is in implementation because with implementation, it's leadership that matters. And the reason why this work has moved forward so quickly is Dr. Carol Johnson has been the standard bearer for the work and has really set the tone for the amount of collaborations that have happened across this district. Has the work been challenging? Yes, very much so. But it is changing the way that we engage families and students, but there is still some resistance. And,
thank you, Michelle. I wanted to leave 10 minutes for questions. So sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay.
Everyone, Michelle's slides are on the PowerPoint deck, and I'm going to go ahead and start taking some questions from our participants, and I'll start with a question from Sheila Bazamore. And her question is, did you work with your higher education institutions to integrate family school partnerships in their teacher education program? And some of our other speakers may want to chime in as well.
Well, here in Boston, we have been connecting with some of the higher ed institutions and have been having conversations. We've gone and we've done presentations in classes and have been engaged in conversations about developing stronger offerings in the teacher education program?
In Maryland, we've worked with both Towson University and the University of Maryland College Park, as well as local community colleges, to bring them aboard in terms of the kind of family engagement programs and services that we've offered. And it's really been a two-way communication in terms of them informing the work that we're doing and we informing the work that they're doing to have family engagement be more central to their teacher education program.
Thank you. And we received a number of questions about principal leadership. So the next question is, how do we focus on getting principals to support higher levels of parent engagement?
I believe that it's around training, building capacity for principals and school leaders to really understand the significant role that parents play in their child's education, but also the importance of the partnership and how by working together with families that it will ultimately support their child's student success.
Great. Michelle?
I think that it's critical that principals understand that this is about partnership and that their job becomes easier when they partner with families and understand who their families are and how to partner with them.
Great. Our next question comes from Nancy Melendez-Giron. And her question is, are there studies or information about effective parent involvement at high schools or the transition levels with critical periods in which students are transitioning from middle school to high school to college?
I know that Nancy Hill has done some work specifically on middle schools and that transition and family engagement at that level. I believe also that Karen Mapp when she was at the Institute for Responsive Education, they did a study on high school family centers and the impact of family engagement through them, through the family centers. I think that's what comes to my mind very quickly.
Ann Henderson has also been working at the high school level, and she has recently developed a set of rubrics on how to engage families and make purposeful linkages between family engagement and student achievement, and giving strategies for how to do that at the high school level.
Thank you, Susan and Michelle. Our next question comes from Marjorie Fujiki. And the question is, how do you ensure that immigrant, especially non-English speaking parents, are involved? Have you been able to hold meetings with those parents separately in their native language? How have you reached out to them?
With the Telling Stories program in Maryland, those are really our target families. We've worked primarily with immigrant to low-income African-American families. Our sessions are done in both English and Spanish. And what's wonderful to see is the English-speaking parents who will begin to interpret for our Spanish-speaking parents. And our Spanish-speaking parents, most of whom are not literate in their own language, understanding that helping their children at home does not necessitate that they had a high school or college education, but it depends more on the skills and the expectations that they set and the partnerships that they form within their schools so that they build those kinds of support systems for their children. And it's worked very, very effectively. In fact, we had one situation where at a community meeting when they were defining new boundaries for schools, there were so many of our parents there that they actually needed translators for our English-speaking parents.
In Boston, we have been running over the last year Parent University, and we also have a year-long ESOL class for parents with a curriculum that not only teaches them English, but teaches them how to become more engaged. But through Parent University, about 40% of our parents were non-English speaking parents because we have offered our classes in Spanish, and next year we'll be expanding to 2 other languages. So the engagement is very high.
For the Title I trainings that we've done, there are trainings where we have had interpreters there. We also encourage the relationship between our ELL family involvement coordinators to work with the Title I coordinators to ensure that all populations are involved and that there is extensive research, as well as to ensure that information is translated so families and parents have the opportunity to know what is going on and be involved.
Thank you, Barbara. That was Barbara was our last speaker, in case those of you who were wondering. And that actually concludes today's webinar.